former au pair from the UK who was au pairing in Spain. Hi, Alana, and thank you for being here with us.
Hi, thank you for having me.
And we're going to talk about your experience of being an au pair. And as usual, I'd like to start from asking some personal questions. So,
Sure.
where are you from? How old are you? And how did you find aupair.com?
Okay, so I am 19, turning 20 years old. I am from the United Kingdom. I was born in Glasgow, and then I lived in the States for a while, so I have a bit of an American accent, but I am a current student at the University of St. Andrews in Scotland. And I found aupair.com really useful, actually. I really enjoyed using it, and I thought that the service was really great.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. What are you currently studying, if it's okay to ask?
Sure. I study international relations and sustainable development.
Oh, that sounds really interesting.
I think so.
Okay, so the first standard question is, why did you want to become an au pair?
Sure. So I've always I've always heard of au pairs, and I always thought it would be a really cool thing to try and do, because I had friends when I was younger who had au pairs in their own families when they were growing up. And I thought that it sounded like a really interesting idea. And so at the beginning of last semester, so in October, November, I was figuring out what to do for break, and with COVID, I didn't really want to go home to the States. I wanted to travel, seeing as I had spent the past summer working as well, and I wanted to take the opportunity to travel. So I decided to explore the idea of doing aupair.com or of au pairing. I had already set up my profile because I thought about doing it this upcoming summer and thought, like, why not just see if someone is interested in having an au pair over Christmas break for a short term. And I found a couple of families actually, and I thought that was really great. I wanted to go and experience something new and learning a new language, for sure, but mainly traveling and learning a new language.
That's cool. You've mentioned already that you've been living in the US for some time.
Yes.
Yeah, when was it and for how long?
I lived in the US from 2013 until 2019 when I graduated high school.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, so you already had an experience like living abroad, let's say.
Yeah, definitely. I've moved with my family to the States when I was 12. So kind of cultural shifts weren't really a big deal for me. Obviously, going to a place where there's a different language spoken is, but I'm comfortable with traveling, and also I'm comfortable in those environments because my parents are still, and my home is still in the States, and I've been in Scotland for some time now.
Oh, so that's quite interesting because yeah, your home, let's say, is now and the well, where your parents are, but still you grew up in the UK. That's
Yeah.
really, really something. Okay. If you were an au pair in 2019.
2020/2021. I was there for
Yeah.
December and January.
Mm-hmm. Uh, okay. There is a tricky question. Did you need a visa, or it was still the last train you could jump in?
So this is a really interesting part of the process for me. So I have a British passport, and I needed to apply to get a European health insurance card. So because I applied for that before 2021, before Brexit occurred, I was able to get that more easily. It's now invalid, like it became expired when I left Spain. So now I think the process looks a little bit different about getting an EHIC card. I think one limitation, I wouldn't have been able to do it if I left now. But that's more because of COVID than Brexit. So I think that the process would be easier to navigate now, should someone be interested in doing that.
But you just needed this kind of insurance, but not visa.
Not a visa,
Yep.
no, because I have my British passport, so it was legal.
Yep, that's perfect. Okay. So did you have any fears or doubts before leaving?
I had so many fears and doubts. So many. I well, because I decided I was going to go au pair a month before I left, it was very, very last minute. And also just with COVID, I kind of in the back of my mind thought it was going to be canceled literally right up until I got off the plane and met my host mom for the first time. I thought they were going to turn me around at the border in Spain and just say no. Um, and so that was a big fear leading up to it, that it would just be canceled. And then once I got there, I was very nervous just because I hadn't really used my Spanish in a long time. And I was obviously nervous. Just I'd never been to Spain before and I didn't know anyone there. And I hadn't really prepared for this trip. So if there's anyone who is worried that they weren't prepared at all or is nervous about any of that, I have been there. I did that. Um it was scary, but it was so great. Yeah, I guess like my main fears, and what probably a lot of people's main fears are, is that your host family might turn out to be not very nice, or it might not be a good fit, or that you don't enjoy the experience, or that it's too much. And I honestly can say that I went in like none of my fears were valid. I really settled in so quickly, and my host family was amazing, and I yeah, I felt really good about it. I had the best time and I have no regrets about it.
Mhm. It's so nice how you talk about your host family. How long did it take to find this perfect family for you?
Sure. So, I had been speaking with a couple of families earlier on before I decided I was going to go, because I was thinking of going this summer. And so and what I really like about aupair.com was that I had so many families reaching out to me like all the time. I found that not to be a problem at all. It was almost every single day I would have a new family messaging me asking if I would come in the summer and if I was interested. So I thought that that was really, really great. And so I'd been in contact with a couple of families, and then yeah, in late November, I decided to change my profile just to see if I could find people looking for families in the winter. And I still had lots of people reaching out to me. So I continued to speak to a couple of families. And then in the end, one of the families got COVID, so that wasn't going to work. And then some others were not too keen on having an au pair just for a short amount of time, which is also fine. I'm surprised I found a family at all, um, given the circumstances. But I found this family, and just I spoke to them a couple of times on FaceTime, and they were like, if you can come, we want to have you. And I think just their ability to be flexible, was really what made it the ultimate choice for me. I didn't really interview with a lot of families. I kind of called this family and they seemed so great. And because they were able to be flexible, I was kind of like, if this is going to happen, I'll go with them. And they had been interviewing some other au pairs. So then they got back to me and said that they had chosen me, which was so great.
That's nice. Could you talk more about your relationships with your host parents and host kids?
Sure, of course. So in my host family, there was two parents, a mom and a dad, and then there was three boys, which is
Oh,
kind
wow.
of a lot. Three boys, they were aged 6, 8, and 10. So there was a lot of energy. I did not grow up with brothers, so that was crazy for me. But I had such a great relationship with them. I thought that they were really patient with me and really forgiving, and that is something I would definitely look for in a family again. And what I would suggest people to look for is a family that has expectations that are quite reasonable to start off with, and they can be flexible with what you need, because it's like, first of all, there's the language barrier, which is different for everyone's situation. But for me, my host family did not speak any English, and I had taken Spanish in high school and hadn't used it in 2 years. So the first week was rough. Um, and I think that my host mom was so forgiving. She was very laid back, carefree. And she would keep telling me like this is an adventure. And I think also because of my circumstances, because it was so last minute, they weren't really like, we need an au pair to do all these things. They had that ability to be laid back, which was very, very ideal. And so I was very close with the mom. We would spend a lot of time in the evenings together. And the my host dad I also loved. He was so sweet. He would always show me all these pictures and these books, and at dinner time especially, we would have just these huge long talks, and it was just very funny because he would always talk to me about politics and like very complicated things in Spanish, and I would understand and be like, yes. And then my host mom would be like, Abby, she doesn't understand. Like, you can't be talking to her about this. Like, this is a lot. And it was just very funny. And then with the three boys, they were great. They had so much energy, and it was definitely a lot. But I kind of would mess around with them and kind of just became like their older sister, I suppose. And my host mom, honestly, she was amazing. I felt very close to her, and I think her and I really resonated together as the only females in the house. And she also studies. She doesn't say she works for an organization in their biology department, which is related to what I do for sustainable development. So we were able to talk about that, which was really great. And we would just have really great talks, and yeah.
That's so cool. And what was your like typical day? You would wake up and then
Sure. I'll just wait for the
oh,
siren
it's
to pass.
fine.
So a typical day for me, it wasn't a super usual, like typical au pair experience in that I didn't have a lot of responsibilities with the kids in terms of chores. I didn't have anything like that. So in the morning, I would be woken up by the boys getting ready for school. And then I had to go, I took a language course actually in Madrid, in person, which was awesome, at a language school called Paraninfo. And that's also something I would really, really recommend au pairs to do, because I would wake up, I would get on the bus, go to my language course, which was 4 hours every day. And I also met other au pairs at this language course, and other people who, yeah, were kind of in my position, but not really. And so I would go to my class for 4 hours. That was in Madrid. That was really great. And then I'd usually have an hour afterwards to go get lunch before I had to get the bus back, because meet the I had to be at home at the same time the boys got home to spend an hour with each of the boys. So my main work was every day I would spend an hour with each of the three boys. So that was 3 hours, helping them with their homework. And if they didn't have homework, just speaking in English with them, finding activities to do, playing games. And then after that, I I kind of chose, like, it was my free time, but I chose to spend the whole time with the family because I really loved them, and I would like help make dinner, and I would hang out with the boys. I'd play games with them. We would play Just Dance on the Wii. Um, I would have some homework for my language course, and we would have dinner very late because it was Spain. So they were long days. But that was kind of a typical day for me. And then I would call my mom. I would yeah, do that sort of thing. So that was my typical day for Monday through Friday. And then on Saturdays, I would have to work until 1 o'clock in the afternoon, just kind of doing the same thing. And then I would go into the city and hang out with my au pair friends because they would also have the weekends off, which was so much fun. And we would hang out like late into the night. And then Sundays, I had the entire day free. So I would go and do kind of touristy things, like go to museums, see my friends again. And so, yeah.
That sounds perfect, like ideal experience.
It definitely
um,
was. Yeah.
you mentioned your friends, and for some au pairs, it's kind of difficult to find new friends because of the foreign culture and everything. How was it for you?
Sure. So I honestly, that was something unexpected for me that was so essential for my experience. There was a lot of things that were unexpected by me and totally essential, but doing this language course and being able to get up, get away from the house, and kind of have a routine outside of the family was essential. And that was where I met my au pair friends. So I know that you can also be part of Facebook groups for au
Mhm.
pairs. I didn't know that, me being very unprepared. And so I kind of wanted to go into it not making friends, if that makes sense. I had like a very intense semester and wanted to just chill, but I realized that this was very important to have other au pairs when you're an au pair because it's a crazy experience and none of like I didn't know any au pairs otherwise. So I met them at my language course. They were so welcoming. I like walked into the language course literally the second day that I had gotten to Spain. I had just finished my semester here, or I was still doing my semester here for the last week. Walked in there kind of feeling very exhausted and overwhelmed, and they were just like friends with each other, and then they were like, okay, like what's your phone number, because we can like we're going to hang out this weekend. And I was like, okay. And we would hang, yeah, we hung out on the weekends, and they were the best just because they were going through an experience that none of us really were prepared for, and it's such an abnormal experience, like it's very, I don't know, at least for me, I didn't know a lot of au pairs growing up. None of my friends have ever done it before. Um, and so it was really great to just, you have some kind of frustrations or you have some things that are difficult to navigate, like, your relationship with your host family. There's no kind of precedent for that. And so it can be kind of tricky to just figure out what expectations they have of you and what you're allowed to do. And so it was really, really great to be able to text my host friend, my au pair friends, and just kind of say, this is what I'm frustrated with, this is how I'm
Mhm.
feeling. And they're just like, I get it. Like, this is similar to what I had. And it was nice that we could all go and hang out on the weekends and be there for each other because we only really had each other. We didn't have a lot of other friends in the city. So it was like having a little family, and we became so close so quickly because we were all doing this kind of crazy thing, and it made it quite funny. It's a funny situation to be like, oh, my kids, they were making me crazy, or like my host mom is crazy, and just you could laugh about it, and it was so essential. But I also think being in a city kind of helped that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, you mentioned that it was like your first time in Spain.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Were you culturally shocked? What was, I don't know, most shocking for you?
Yeah, yeah, of course I was. I was very culturally shocked. I'd never even like been to a country independently before. Never mind a country where they don't really speak English super well in Spain. Um, and so I was very overwhelmed. And also being an au pair kind of helps in that because it's not like you're there with your own family and you can go and have dinner whenever you want. So I kind of was fully immersed into
Mhm.
this very authentic cultural experience. We would have, for me, which still stands to be like the biggest cultural shock, is having dinner so late. We have to have dinner at like 10:30 at the earliest. And I'm the kind of person who has dinner as soon as possible, like 6 p.m., like like several hours before this. And so that was a big cultural thing for me. And also just what they eat as well. They eat very differently and they eat more frequently. And so that was the biggest thing for me. Like, you couldn't order food in a restaurant between the hours of 5 and 8. And so that was very like interesting for me how I guess, yeah, how the whole diet thing works and their
Mhm.
schedule as well. Like everyone would just kind of take the afternoons off between like 4 and 5 for the merienda, which is kind of like the siesta, which they don't do that anymore. It's more merienda where they go and drink beer in the streets, which was so much fun to do. And so that was my biggest cultural kind
Mhm.
of shock for Madrid. I also just with COVID, it was very interesting because there they wore masks all the time, like even in the streets out in public, and even in my like neighborhood. I lived like just outside of Madrid, like half an hour on the bus, and so it was in the suburbs. And I would be on a run in a mountain and no one else would be around and I'd still be wearing my mask. And even here in the UK we don't wear masks in the street, so that was very interesting to me, how that worked. um and then also a final thing, I was also there over the holidays, so
Mhm.
I got to experience Christmas and the Day of the Three Kings, and that was just crazy in and of itself. Like that was another kind of thing. I thought I would just kind of not celebrate Christmas, kind of be on my own, it would be fine. And they brought me to their grandparents' house and they got me presents and they were like, Alana, you have to experience this, and like you have the day off, but like don't work today, like you have the day off. I still spend it with them, obviously. It was so great, it was amazing, yeah.
Wow. Um, you, I mean, obviously you were there during the beginning of pandemic and during its hardest times. But were you able to travel around a bit, or were you just in the city?
So I was just in the city. We had
Mhm.
talked about going to Valencia for the weekend at some point, which didn't end up happening. um, so I was in Madrid for all of it, which, since I was only there for 2 months, I was there for 8 weeks, and I would have like, I guess, like 8 days off because I would have like Sunday each Sunday, so
Mhm.
8 Sundays off. So I honestly was fine with not traveling around. I think, and this is where it gets a little bit complicated because I didn't have the entire weekend off, and it was expected that I would come home each night, obviously, and sleep there. So I think that if it was outside of COVID times, what the advantages of being with my family would have kind of been disadvantages. Like, I don't think I would have really been allowed to travel around. I don't know if
Mhm.
my host parents would be super okay with it, with me leaving and being that independent. Um, so I didn't get to travel around, but I was okay with it because I didn't have that much free time anyways, and I
Mhm.
loved Madrid. I wanted to spend as much time in there as I could, and I think that I would go back to Madrid and or go back to Spain and travel when I didn't really have like the limitations of being an au pair.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. So you describe your experience as almost perfect.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you if there were anything that you maybe didn't like, or Mhm. Yeah.
Sure. So yeah, when I explain, like when I talk about my experience with everyone, I I always say like inevitably you're going to run into some kind of like gray areas, some conflicts, because at the end of the day, I didn't know my host family before. And I presume if people are using aupair.com, they also don't have connections to their family before. So
Mhm.
for me, like navigating some of the expectations that my family had of me was a little bit tricky. They were so nice, and I had a close relationship with them, like kind of a personal one where I didn't want to upset them. And I spent a lot of time with them. And I think that at sometimes it was a bit exhausting. Like, again, I don't really like, I didn't really like staying up that late to eat. I would get really, really hungry at like 8. And I would have been quite happy to have had dinner by myself and then gone to bed, like some of my other au pair family friends did. And I think also my host parents just had a lot of rules for me. They kind of, not necessarily rules, but expectations. And so on Saturday nights, they still wanted me home at like 10:30, and that was kind of unreasonable as the buses only ran like once an hour. I would end up having to leave the city at 9, and I didn't really love that. Like, whereas my au pair friends kind of had a different relationship with their families where they could go and do whatever they wanted basically for 48 hours in the weekend, and their parents wouldn't worry about them. But I would be getting texts from my host mom saying, like, come home. Um, and so I think that I I think I had the best kind of situation out of my au pair friends, because it was nice to have a comforting family and for them to not have a lot of work for me to do. Like, I didn't have to take the boys to school or anything like that. But also because I didn't want to upset them, it was stressful for me in another way because I wouldn't know what to do. I wouldn't know, like, oh, if I stay up past my curfew, like, is that okay or is that not okay? Like, because they never specifically outlined that they needed me back. It was just kind of like a bit foggy, and I would kind of be like, I really want to stay out late, and they never made that a rule, but I think they would be upset, and that was just kind of stressful.
Mhm.
Um, and maybe like another negative thing, the boys were like quite tough on me at the end, like, and um, they were just rowdy boys, and they liked to get to me, and emotionally that was kind of tough, especially because I was very drained by the end of it. So I think that for me, just navigating the relationship I had with my host parents was a bit foggy at some points, and I think that all au pairs can say that as well. You get frustrations with them because, I was 19 when I went. Like, I'm a responsible adult, and they don't need to parent me. They don't need me to really be home by a certain hour because that's kind of my decision. But being there kind of felt like I was like 16 again.
Mhm.
So I guess that could very easily be solved or even talked about before you go there. If you kind of know you want to have this amount of free time and stuff, then
Mhm.
definitely look for that in a host family. Like, just be very clear on their expectations for you. And yeah, yeah.
Mhm. Okay. Then let's talk a bit about your after au pair experience.
Sure.
Uh, what advice do you have for future au pairs
Sure.
besides the ones that you already gave?
Yeah. I honestly, I cannot recommend the experience enough to anyone. Everyone should do it at some point. My advice would be, I would say, go into it with no expectations. I went into it with no expectations, and I was continuously surprised. I was so happy with my whole experience. I had several moments where I was just like, this is crazy. What am I doing? Like, I'm so lucky I get to do this. So I think going into it with no expectations, except for maybe just expecting that you will be working. Like, it's not a nannying thing, but you are going to be living with another family, and you will be giving up a certain amount of independence to be doing that. Um, so I think in order to aid that, kind of speak to a lot of families. Au pair.com gives you that opportunity to do that because you get so much interest. So speak to a lot of families and kind of find a good balance between working and having freedom. I found I have like this theory, but I was kind of like, the more responsibility an au pair has with their family, the more freedom they have. So I had a friend who basically was like a nanny, basically like a housekeeper. She did everything. She made all of the meals. She took the kids to school. She did everything. And then her free time was her free time. She could do anything. Um, she could like when she was kind of like, you know, a 9 to 5 person, and then what she did between those other hours, she could do whatever she wanted. But when she was working, she was really working. She had a lot of work to do. And for me, I had like no responsibility, none. And I had like no freedom as well. I wasn't really able to, like, my free time was my free time, but I was expected to be home by a certain point, and even when I wasn't working, it wasn't like I didn't feel comfortable just going up to my room for the rest of the evening. I would spend the whole time with the families. And so that was because I had like it was more of a cultural like family friendshipy thing. And for some other au pairs, it's not really like that. It's more about going to do this work for this family, staying with them and having a place to stay, but going and experiencing things outside of the house. Um, and so, yes, I think trying to find a good balance between responsibility and freedom is my good advice. I don't know, just go into it and give it your all. Like, I was only there for a short amount of time, and I would listen to Spanish music on the bus, and I would read Spanish magazines, and I would talk in Spanish with my au pair friends all the time, and I really limited my time FaceTiming people in English. And then on my days off, instead of, even though I was exhausted, I would go out and go to museums and do touristy things. Like, don't make it harder on yourself by speaking in your native language, because that will give you such language fatigue, like translation fatigue. I think that although it was intense, I basically spoke in Spanish for the whole 2 months, and that really, really, really helped. Like, yeah, I would say just give it your all. Yeah.
That's cool. And my next question is: when you think about your au pair experience, what are the most memorable things? Um, yeah, that
Sure.
there were.
I think like the most memorable things probably were the holidays. Like, there was a day where the day of the Three Kings, where I had no idea what was happening. I was just told, like, at my language school, they were like, we don't have school tomorrow, and I was like, okay. And then and this was like several days after Christmas, and it was just very funny, like waking up, going downstairs, like the three boys were dragging me, and there was a tree up and more presents, and I was like, I have no idea what's happening. And so that was really funny. My like just going out with my au pair friends was also just so much fun. And those would just always be very funny moments because yeah, it was just very exciting for all of us. And seeing as I'd been in the UK, which had been very restricted with COVID for a long time, just getting to go out at all was very interesting. And like getting to go sit indoors and order food was weird. And that just made everything a bit more crazy. But I think, yeah, some of my most memorable moments were definitely like with the boys. Um, and then with my friends at my language course. Yeah.
Okay, then I have one final question for you. Would you
Sure.
do it again?
That is such a good question. And I don't think I would. I think that it is a once in a lifetime experience in that I could not do it again, because I think that because of my situation, I really liked not having responsibility. I'm not that good with kids, honestly. Like, I'm not a natural mom. I'm not I don't love babysitting or anything. So for me, not having responsibility with the boys was good for me. And having such a laid back family who was so forgiving and so understanding, I don't think I would find another family like that for me. That was such a good fit. And so I think that my next experience, I would always be comparing it to my first experience. And for those reasons, I probably couldn't do it again. Um, and so I guess like the reasons why I couldn't do it again was because I had such a good time the first time. Um, yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing your experience with us. Yeah, it just made me like wanting to do it. Uh, and yeah, I hope you will inspire many au pairs
I hope
who
so too.
watching. Thank you so much, and yeah, have a nice day and have a great success with your future, yeah, studying
Thank
and
you
everything.
so much. It was great to talk to you.